Hi, I'm Raisa Rasul, and for my art history final project, I went to the Changing Perspectives of Native Americans gallery at the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art at Bentonville, Arkansas. On display is the sculpture The Old Arrow Maker by Edmonia Lewis. This sculpture is immensely different from the other artworks in the gallery depicting Native Americans. It is the only piece in the gallery that depicts and was made by a Native American woman. The exhibition focused on the changing attitudes towards Native Americans during the 19th century. In the wake of the Indian Removal Act of 1830, an artistic emphasis grew on capturing the idea of the noble savage who lived outside of the laws and corruption of civilization. The suppression of Indian culture grew artist nostalgia for what was in the past and led to romantic depictions of what was considered to be exotic lifestyles of Native Americans. Lewis often created sculptures of Native Americans. This particular piece illustrates a scene from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's popular epic poem Song of Hiawatha, which is about the strength and greatness of the young Indian chief Hiawatha. In the poem, Hiawatha is depicted as a universal hero of the Native Americans, someone who is looked up to by people of all cultures. He embodies the idea of the noble savage. The poem mirrors history as it ends with Hiawatha welcoming the priest of prayer, the paleface, into his village. One reason Lewis chose to create this piece could have been because Hiawatha was from the same tribe as Lewis's mother. Also, since Native Americans were not usually subjects of popular artworks, nor were they usually portrayed in a favorable light, Lewis might have felt a connection with Longfellow's sympathetic view of her people. Edmonia Lewis was an American sculptor born in 1844, whose works show influence of neoclassicism. Her mother was of African and Ojibwa descent and her father was an African American. With the help of her brother, who supported her financially after her parents' death while she was young, Lewis attended Oberlin College at Ohio. She excelled in drawing there, but left after she was accused of stealing from and poisoning two of her classmates. Before her trial began, she was brutally beaten by a mob. After gaining her acquittal, she traveled to Boston, again with help from her brother, and was introduced to a local abolitionist sculptor from whom she received lessons in modeling. She later went to Rome, where she joined an artistic group that drew influence from neoclassicism and romanticism. At Rome, her sculptures gained her popularity. This marble sculpture in the round shows a father and his daughter looking at someone, or symbolically looking towards the future. There is a feather on Minnehaha's head, and both she and her father are wearing necklaces. Her dress and her father's skirt have the same stylization and pattern, hinting that both are from the same type of tribal cloth. The arrow maker is placed higher than his daughter. In his hands he is holding two stones which look like they are being sharpened, and at his feet are a slaughtered deer and a broken arrow. Lewis's The Old Arrow Maker is different because its underlying theme is not only racial equality but also gender equality. Although Longfellow's poem focuses on the male character, Lewis chose to depict the story of the female character. She illustrates the moment of Minnehaha and her father watching as Hiawatha approaches them right before asking for Minnehaha's hand in marriage. His presence is noted from his gift of slaughtered deer placed at Minnehaha and her father's feet, from their beautiful and stylized clothing which indicate an event, and from their expressions of observance. In this scene, Lewis puts power in the hands of Minnehaha and her father, since they are being approached with an offer, and this power is echoed in their expressions, which don't show any emotion, thus showing Minnehaha as a rational thinking woman. Their focus hint that they are not only looking at Hiawatha, but also the audience, which expands the borders of the artwork, since the audience feels part of the piece. By not including Hiawatha in the sculpture, Lewis expands its space, which makes its size seem larger than it actually is. Because of her education in Rome, most of Lewis's works show influences of neoclassicism, which are present in the heroic subject matter, expression of solidity, and the clean shapes and lines. Nuances of neoclassicism are also present in the soft drapery of Minnehaha's skirt, the flow of her hair, and the feather placed delicately on her head. The use of marble has the effect of whitening the color of the Native American subjects, which shows them in a classical way, which is immensely different from the depictions of Native Americans then. The figures of Minnehaha and her father hold gravity in that they pull your eyes to them. Their blank facial expressions represent their determination and unemotional view of their future. A sense of nobility and honor is exuded from their facial expressions, postures, and their stylized clothing and jewelry. In addition, the father's placement higher than his daughter also conveys a patriarchal authority, which might have given Lewis more credit as an artist with her critics. Minnehaha and her father are also placed on a circular platform, which expresses order and naturalism. Realism is also present in this sculpture. Since she wanted her audience to sympathize with Native Americans and women, it makes sense that Lewis tried to depict them as realistically as possible. She adds realism to this piece to make it seem relatable. Minnehaha is the figure of strength and energy, shown in her defined bicep muscles and the smooth planes of her face, indicating youth and vitality. Her father is old, his skin has more lines for wrinkles, his posture is curved like an old man's bent with age, and the skin of his chest is pulled tight because of aging. They are not savages because despite his age, the old arrow maker is still working on his trade. His hard work makes his character more likable and relatable. Lewis was also influenced by the ideas of abolitionism and division in the United States during the Civil War that was happening during the mid-1800s. Choosing to depict a time of marriage between Hiawatha and Minnehaha, who come from different tribes, indicates her wish of reconciliation between the North and South of the United States. All of Lewis's sculptures were of African and Native Americans. She faced gender and racial discrimination herself. Written in her passport while traveling from America to Rome was the sentence, "M. Edmonia Lewis is a black girl sent by subscription to Italy, having displayed great talents as a sculptor." Daily discrimination and ignorance could be why she wanted to illustrate Native Americans and a woman from a sentimental point of view. By making her subjects seem likable, she is indirectly telling the audience not to judge her by her race, culture, and gender. This artwork shares many similarities to Mary Guillaume Benoit's Portrait of a Negress. Both pieces are made by female artists and are influenced by neoclassicism. They illustrate a female from a minority community in a sympathetic light. Speaking of light, a difference between these two pieces is that Benoit chose to emphasize the race of her subject by painting her dark, while Lewis made the race of her subjects at first sight ambiguous. This dissimilarity points to the opposite approaches of the two artists. Benoit's painting is of a reclining nude and thus more evocative, while Lewis's is more conservative. Despite the differences, the pieces are similar because they try to get the audience to relate with their subjects. The reason I picked this sculpture is because it made me feel like I was watching a pivotal moment in the lives of real people. Small details such as their expressions, their clothing, the slaughtered deer at their feet, and their direction of stare drew me into thinking about who they would be as living people. Also, among all the artworks depicting Native Americans, I felt that this one was completely different. Unlike other paintings where the subjects are mostly male, wore bright feathers, and engage in pastimes such as hunting or gathering by the fire, this piece lets me understand the personality of Native Americans and gives me a sense of who they actually are.